Hello, everyone. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, welcome to the widest orbit.
Welcome. What are we going to discuss today?
Today we were going to talk about the Netflix special, Behind Her Eyes, a limited series based on a novel, 2017 novel by Sarah Pinborough.
And it's it's a fascinating series. It's a mini series, right? It has
Yeah, I think
one
which
season and seven
right.
episodes, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yeah. Came out in 2021.
Right.
So a little while back, but you and I only saw it recently and
Yes.
has some just a couple of few really cool metaphysical things going on in there. So thought it'd be cool to talk about those.
The one sort of non-metaphysical level from which I thought about the show, it obviously has a metaphysical aspect, but a non-metaphysical aspect from which I saw the show was drug addiction and
Right.
how addiction can lead you to certain paths in life from which you can never return or which you cannot undo. That's one level at which I read the series. But
Right.
what do you think about that uh, read?
I like that. And I actually hadn't had that explicit thought, but it goes well with what we were talking about earlier about Heidegger, his view on addiction, right? And so, just real quick,
Yeah,
the essence of the human being is to care, all right, based on the myth of Curie. And so that is our essence, is to care. And then what he says is that in addiction, the entire structure of care is um, mutated, if you will, so that the addiction becomes the sole focus, and everything one does and undertakes to do, even the thought processes we have, end up being in service to the addiction. And in
right.
that way, our essence is sort of mutated, or adumbrated, or however we want to put it. And so that really goes well with what you just said. And I hadn't thought about that in terms of the show, but
Yes.
that's definitely a good facet, right, uh,
So,
of the story.
one way to understand Heidegger's description of the human being as a caring being is that Heidegger's focus as a phenomenologist is to study the human being and study how the human being engages with others and with the world in terms of what matters. Like
Hmm.
uh, uh, care for Heidegger obviously also involves the emotional meaning of care, but even more sort of fundamentally, Heidegger is engaged with how things matter to
Hmm.
Dasein or the human being, how things make sense to the human being. And the human being fundamentally is not a scientist, but is a being who is living his or her everyday life. And so, how
Right.
things matter to me in my everydayness, which is also a Heideggerian term, um, that's what Heidegger's analysis of the structure of care uh, is talking about. And in addiction, I think what would happen is that what matters becomes kind of hyper focused so that
Hmm.
the world, in a way, shrinks
Right.
to this one pursuit, and it becomes the master of everything. And so that's one. And Rob's personality, in a way, can be read through that angle, and then Heidegger then would become an interesting sort of lens to read the film
Right. I
also.
think so. Hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
certainly with Rob, um, as sort of the quintessential addict, right? And clearly he's not just addicted to what I think it's heroin, right? But his obsession, right, with David.
Yes,
Okay.
that's a good point.
That
Good
could,
point.
that's addiction can take many forms. And so that becomes
Yes.
relevant there as well. And then in terms of your description of Heidegger's understanding of care and then what happens to it with addiction, there's the sort of the narrowed focus of the Dasein of the human being. At the same time, there's a way in which the addiction eclipses or obscures being from presencing in any other way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's interesting because it's not solely, I don't think, that the person, the Dasein, has this addiction and that makes them tunnel vision. It really is sort of a more dynamic thing where the presencing of being in myriad forms just simply isn't capable of unfolding,
Yes.
right?
And that way of putting it also removes the blame entirely from the individual or the subject. I mean, it's not just
Right,
because addiction is not about the will. It's
right,
not as if people can choose at that point.
right.
So it's not the subject which is the focus, but it's like you say, it's much more deeply dynamic. And the way
Mhm.
to put this is, I mean, the way that you put it as, being the constraining of the myriad ways in which being shows itself
Right,
being constrained. And who begins this process, whether it's being or Dasein, that's a kind of a chicken and
right,
egg at that point, I think.
right,
It's a much more dynamic and yes, it's important at that point to not focus only on the subject
right,
because in many ways that is Heidegger's critique of everything. So,
right,
so it would be his critique of this as well. So, yes,
right.
that's an important point to keep in mind. Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's the addiction facet. Um, and then, of course, there's um, sort of the more straightforwardly metaphysical elements to the story. So that really specifically involves uh, the practice of astral projection.
Hmm.
Um, and then
How are we using the word metaphysics in this context, though?
Well, for me, and I think we've talked about this, it's anything that's outside of epistemology. So, epistemology deals with those things which can be known in a technical sense, that is proven
Right.
via scientific method, mathematics, straightforward logic, that kind of thing. That's epistemological. Metaphysical matters for our conversations and for me in general have to do with all of those elements of our thinking or our experience or our world where there's a mystery, where there truly is some mystery, where it's not something that's provable in a technical sense,
Right.
but yet it could be part of someone's experience or their belief system or something like that. And astral projection, I think, it clearly fits there. It's not something we can go do in a lab, as far as I understand, and make it reproducible evidence over and over. But
Right.
yet, clearly, myriad human beings, claim to be able to do it. It's existed, the idea, for millennia, I believe, in terms of
Right.
textual references. Um, so yeah,
Right.
that's what I had in mind there with
Got it.
calling that
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
metaphysical.
Yeah.
Um, so that's sort of the central key thing, right? In this sort of twisty turn that the story takes.
Which interestingly, they only bring up in the final, or I think in the second last episode, the penultimate episode is, at least it only shows up in the second half
It's
of
right,
the season,
right.
right?
Explicit, well, in its full explicit nature. Now, there's definitely reference um, I don't know how early on, I can't recall, but because she has this ability to lucid dream. So see, it's
Yes.
almost like there's a step-by-step thing that she ends up sharing. Obviously, she shared it with Rob when they were in the institution, and they were talking about Adele. Adele had shared with Rob her, so she had techniques, right? They involve
Yeah.
counting fingers and things like that. And so the first step is to sort of learn to calm yourself a certain way. Then there's this dream state stuff that happens with lucid dreaming, visioning doors. And then there's the more full on sort of putting it's like self hypnosis and then being able to astral project,
And
which
I
in the
think
film
it
they show you with those floating orbs, right?
right, right.
That's what you're
And
looking at.
it looks as if what needs to be learned is that second part, the part of astral projection. But
Mhm.
what is shared already between Louise, Adele, and Rob is the capacity to dream
Right.
in a lucid way. I mean, that all of them already had. And then the
Hmm.
next thing to learn, the next thing to know is this walking through that door and
Right.
being able to astral project. So
Right.
yes,
And
so
of course, David, as the other main player, is more like a
e-
rationalist, a
exactly.
logical
Yes.
science, and so he's just not in that
Yeah,
realm.
it's symbolic that he's a therapist.
Right.
He deals with medicine, and
Hmm.
they show that too. And yeah, so
Right.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
Um, so what
So
do you think? Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
So what do you think? What did you find most interesting in how they show the process and the nature of astral projection in this series?
Well, the concept of astral projection is something I was already familiar with. And one thing that was mentioned in the show what that I was like is the idea when Adele I think is explaining it to Louise that you can only go to places that you actually know,
Yes.
and because you have to be able to visualize it, right? Which I just found that very fascinating and interesting and apt, honestly. um that would be an element of it. Now, as far as the things I had read, and even people I know, personally, who would claim they can do this, I had never heard of anyone claiming to be able to trade with someone else. That was new to me. Now, maybe to others it's not, but that was new to me in this show. The idea that two people could trade, switch out,
And
and then
and in life, I mean, even the let's call this the trading of souls. That
uh,
happens. Maybe it can. I mean, for example, the closest that I can think of as an analogy to this is possession. But
right.
in possession, one of I mean, the possessor is dead, and
Mhm.
their soul is out there, and it's that soul which comes and possesses uh,
Right.
a living being. But this
Right.
idea that one can exchange souls whilst
Right.
being alive, that's interesting. And you're saying that
Right.
this is a new thing. This is not
Well, for me, it was. I hadn't came across the notion of astral projecting and trading. So that was just fascinating in and of itself. Um, and then obviously the show just really took a lot of twists at the end that were like is why I found this series to be so incredible that it just I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Um, and then one of the things that I thought we would talk about though is how because there's different ways we can understand if we're trying to understand what is really going on with this astral projection thing. So, but just to quickly run through. So you had this person, Adele. She's, from all accounts, was a sweet, happy-go-lucky kind of person. Uh, was in love. I don't know if she was in love with David, but they knew each other. Maybe they were already in love. She's astral projecting one night. She had an aunt who was a practitioner of witchcraft. That's mentioned in there, and there's a painting of that woman. But so one night she's out astral projecting. She's not there. Her parents die in a fire, right? So that's probably her guilt on that. It's part of why she ends up in a mental facility. And that's where she meets Rob. And she and Rob become great friends. And she then shares with Rob her techniques, right? On how the lucid dreaming and the astral projecting, right?
Did
Um,
she teach him everything from the scratch? Did Rob already have these abilities? Is that mentioned
I don't
explicitly?
honestly, I can't remember if there's an explicit mention of it, but she definitely sort of teaches him from the ground up in the sense that I remember the scenes. A lot of times they're in that tree outside on the grounds of the institution. And at that point, um, Rob is keeping a journal,
Yes.
right? Um, and later, Adele will give that journal to Louise, right? To help Louise, right? She says, "Man, here my friend Rob wrote this all down, and you can use this." Um, and then, of course, only later, obviously, in the very end, do we come to understand that Adele
Was
has
Rob.
not been Adele
Mhm.
for a long time, but rather she and Rob switched. And while Rob was in her body, Rob killed her in his body and threw that body down the well, right? So that's just so wow.
Mm.
All because he's in love with David, right? He was envious of Adele and in love with
No,
David.
I think, I mean, the way I read Rob's character, he seems to have been in love with both, even till the end. I mean, so he loved Adele in so much that he wanted to be her and be with David. And the same happens with Louise as well. He loved
Right.
Louise also in the way that he loved Adele, to the extent that he wants to be her.
Be that
And
person. Right.
yes, and that's how I
Because
think,
he does in the institution, it is made clear that he's gay. I don't
yes,
know if you caught that, but that sexually
oh, of
he's
course,
into
yeah,
men.
yes.
But obviously he does have affection for Adele
He
and they have this friendship,
right
right?
to the point, I
But
think,
he's
of
an addict then.
identification, to the
Hmm.
point of
Well,
identification, even.
right.
Yes,
I was going to say, and we got to remember he's already an addict. He's been an addict,
yes,
and
yes, indeed.
so that is functioning in terms of who he is and how he operates,
Hmm.
and so right. So in the end, right, I'm assuming everyone's seen it, and so Adele, which is really Rob, just figures out the way to be with David is to switch with Louise and kill Adele's body, which really contains Louise, and take over Louise's body again to be with David, right? Um, but as far as how to understand it, that's what I thought we could talk about really, because I mean, let's just say that we're going to use the word soul
Yes.
just because it's easy. Obviously, we could say, oh, well, what we really mean is consciousness, right? So you've got these individual human beings that, and let's say their soul, and when they astral project, they're engaging in this process that causes their souls to switch bodies, essentially, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that might be the way most people are understanding what's happening in the show. Do
Yes.
you think so? I mean, is
Yeah,
that how you think?
that would be the straightforward reading of what happened. And yeah, two souls outside the body, switching and entering into the other body. I think that would be
Right.
the straightforward reading
Right. And
of what
you
happened.
know, and explain, changes in Adele's personality once she's no longer Adele, right? She's Ra.
Yes.
And now she, shoots up between her toes, right?
Mhm.
She's still Rob in some sense. I mean, it's Rob. And this is interesting too, because, it's the soul or the consciousness, but in this completely different body, but yet that addiction, right, that some
Remains.
might want to say is, that's a material addiction, right, it's
Right.
it's a body thing, is still there, right. um and so that's, I think, the straightforward read of it. The element that I was like taken by, not that it was put forth in the show, but for me, like immediately, was the concept of a daemon, right, and what role, if any, is the daemon playing here if we,
Right.
presuppose metaphysically that that a daemon is real and
Right.
every human
Right.
being has
Right.
one,
But it could
right?
be, it would be, I think, useful though to our audience to first begin with a short explanation
Sure.
of what a daemon is, understood in
Right.
its sort of philosophical nuances and so on. So,
Right.
how would you
Um,
define a daemon?
okay, so from the ancient Greek, the plural daimones, the singular daemon. Um, Later on, of course, the word demon is derived from the term daemon. But straightforwardly, ancient Greek thinking, uh, every human being that's born has a daemon. And you could think of it as your higher self, or some people might want to call it a guardian angel or something. But in Plato, Symposium
Hmm.
specifically, he says the daemon is that which connects the human being to the gods. So a human cannot intercourse with gods in any way. There would be no communication, no interaction, but only by means of the daemon is that possible. He
Interesting.
says they're the ones that fly up to heaven with the prayers. They're the ones that bring the inspiration down. All right. And so it's just, again, the straightforwardly understood, every human being has a daemon, and that daemon is what ties them to the gods.
I was recently reading about Gnosticism and Manichaeanism. And in the
Mhm.
Gnostic religions and in Manichaeanism, there is this concept of the heavenly twin, where
Mm.
all of us have a twin, and that twin is the way I understood it, although this is not how they put it in the text, but the way I understood it is like our twin is our copy, but like a platonic version of us,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And for example, the prophet Mani um, enters into his prophetic career when he first meets his twin. And it
Mm.
happens when he looks at his reflection, and
Mhm.
his twin talks to him and
Mhm.
guides him and tells him to leave this community where he is trapped in, and go throughout the world and spread your message and so on. So, and in the Gnostic religions also, there is this concept of the twin. So, yes, I mean, the daimon reminds me of this, and maybe the concept of the
Right.
daimon has various forms in
Right.
different cultures and so on. So
Right.
just something
No, that's
that I recalled. Yeah.
that made a lot of sense, and that uh the way you described it is reminiscent of how Carl Jung talks about the daemon,
Mm,
um, as, again, the daemon is the source of your destiny, if you will, like your purpose, like again, it's the source of all your talents and all your gifts. It doesn't mean that your life is going to be great, though. It could be that your life actually is incredibly difficult, challenging,
Yes.
painful, even.
Yes.
Um, so, and
And
then,
you may never make any never attempt to make any contact with your twin. And
right,
so those talents, I mean, they would remain only in potentia. They wouldn't,
right,
flourish
right,
or develop because you never made any attempt to get in touch with your heavenly twin. I mean,
right.
so
And for James Hillman, who uses the concept of the daemon, and again, I think these ideas are really in Jung as well, but when we don't, uh, like you said, attempt to make contact with them or assimilate or incorporate or however we want to put it, it's not like they just lay down
yeah,
dormant and that's the end of it. In fact, not at all. In Hillman, some daemons in particular, particularly powerful ones that have a great deal to be expressed in the world, if you're not working them in, so to speak, they're going to harm you. And his examples are actually addiction, recklessness, um, and things of that nature.
that's
That,
fascinating. How does he make that connection? Because that's really fascinating. Um,
yeah,
but when you said that when you don't allow your daemon to be worked in, they get angry or they become it reminded me of like a relative whom you never bothered to invite to your house, and now they are
uh-huh.
pissed because you did not give them that respect. And
Right.
yeah, it makes
And they're going to come burn down your Christmas tree.
right. But
Um,
but I'm really intrigued by the connection that he makes with addiction.
mhm,
That's
yeah.
really fascinating. How does he do that? Why does he do that?
Okay, well, it's been a while since I've read that book. It's again James Hillman, The Soul's Code in Search of Character and Calling, right? And
Mhm.
so in his practice as a psychologist, he incorporated the concept of the daemon and had great success using it to help people. But in his book, he gives different examples. I want to say the ones I remember were Hitler, Judy Garland, Jim Morrison.
Mhm.
Um, mm. But so back to the point about the daemons. So the daemons in and of themselves differ amongst one another. So just to be clear, a daemon, both for Hillman and in the ancient Greek sense, is an immortal. It's not a finite mortal thing. And they are understood to, and again, I'm just using the word emanate because it's easy for me to see it that way.
Mhm.
So if you know, being itself um decides to become beings, right? It's going to become the divinities, right? So many facets, there's many divinities, and then flowing out of those divinities are going to be the daemons. And there every human has a daemon, but for example, I die, the daemon I have is going to end up connecting to a new human.
Mhm.
So the daemon has experience of multiple lived lives in a human body, and they possess talents and gifts. You know, my daemon might be great at oratory,
Mhm.
and someone else's daemon might not be good at oratory, but they excel at math, right? Or pick your talent, your gift, what have you. Now, the way Hillman understood it is that the daemon's really active when we're little, but a lot of times by the time a child is about 7 years old, society and parents and such have dampened or just stamped it out or thwarted it in some way. And that in and of itself can cause that human to then have lots of struggles, mental health and otherwise. Um,
It also reminds me of how then the daemon is the principle of individuation for an
yes,
individual, because
yes,
that's what is your uniqueness, and then society sort of stamps it out or
right.
obscures it
Turning
at least.
everybody,
Yeah,
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 turning everybody into the same, right?
indeed.
Which the whole concept works well with the notion of I think they're called Montessori schools, and then there's other ones, but there's schools that are set up in a way that
Mhm.
they're intended to accommodate the individual uniqueness of each child,
Mhm.
and then try to nurture whatever shows forth, right?
Right.
Whether the child's interested in science or art
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
And so in Hillman's work, he thinks that most people's suffering is because the daemon is not being honored, if you will. It's not getting to express itself in the way it wishes to. And that point about if the daemon isn't doing what it wants to do, it's not that it's just laying still.
Yes.
It's going to, you know, put pressure on the human.
Mhm.
And for Hillman, that can obviously lead to risk-taking behaviors, addictions of various kinds. But he does point out that for some people, and I think this is where he talks about Judy Garland and Jim Morrison, and maybe even talks about Hitler in that section, but we can't think that all daemons are good. Okay.
Yeah.
They have their own agenda in that they are sort of this immortal energy, if you will, that contains a specific kind of knowledge or talent or gift, and
Mm.
it wants to express, right? And so this is where, say, life circumstances or your home or family or religion or what have you can contain you or restrain you and
Right.
actually cause your destruction
Mm.
via the repression of the daemon,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Um, and again, like with Jung, I think it's Jung. I don't know. It's been said by different people in different ways, and it's really great. But the basic idea is, uh, if you don't make friends with your demons,
Right.
you will be their slave.
Right.
All right. And I always like to change it to daemon. And I'm like, you need to make friends with your daemon because the daemon, if you
So,
can have that relationship, is going to achieve some kind of greatness. That doesn't
right.
mean your life is easy,
Right.
but
But
you
I
know,
just had one question. If you said that some of the daemons are not good, so if so, uh, so one would think that when it's not a good daemon, it would be good to not make a relationship with that daemon. But
no.
is the daemon becoming bad because of not engaging with that daemon and letting it express itself, or is it the other way around? If you
Well,
see
for
what.
Hillman,
Hmm.
the good thing is human normativity.
Got
So
it. Okay. Okay.
I didn't
So
mean it to come across like good in some ultimate
got it.
sense.
Got it.
Um,
Hmm.
so for like James Hillman, I think he is talking about Jim Morrison,
Hmm.
right? And his incredible artistic but ultimately that drive, if you will, that energy, um, not only led to the creation of art, but and this could go for so many artists throughout time.
Hmm.
It's like the Nietzsche. It's a divine madness of sorts, right? There's a madness there that can cause someone to say. I think of Hemingway, right? Just drinking, 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 right?
Hmm.
He felt like he couldn't do his writing
Hmm.
without the drinking.
Hmm.
And so, this just brings up a whole wonderful thing to think about that I personally have been trying to think about for gosh like 15 years now, the idea about the daemon and how they and why they differ and how and why they express and one thing to keep in mind would be that they are immortal disembodied beings.
Hmm.
And so this makes me think of Herdlin, poet Herdlin, and Heidegger's um, discussions of some of his poetry, where Herdlin says, again, I'm paraphrasing, but the idea is he says, The gods, again, understanding that we're talking about gods via the daimones, they require humans because without human beings, they don't get to feel anything.
Hmm.
They have no bodies. And so it's kind of beautiful because then it shows the way in which these things are all intertwined and interdependent.
Understood.
Um, and
Now,
so a disembodied daemon, an
mhm,
immortal daemon,
mhm.
unless it's inside of a body, inside of a being that is trying to work with it, it's not getting to feel anything.
Right.
And
So,
Harold emphasizes that, and that the honor, the glory, if you will, is only ever achieved via the human being,
right,
right?
right. So
So
now, how do you then connect this discussion of the daemon with the astral projection aspect of behind our eyes?
well, it's a question I've been messing with for a long time now, which is there really something that we can call the soul of a human being that is immortal? Or is it really the case that there is no such thing as an immortal soul of a human being? What
Uh,
there is a daemon, and a
right.
daemon that was the incarnation into a given human being, and
Hmm.
that is the immortal part.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, and these are just things I ponder. I don't claim to know in any way. But I mean, I ask myself often, how many humans have existed? Think about it. How many human beings have existed throughout the entire existence of humanity?
Billions, obviously. We are already 8 billion.
Trillions, probably, right? Over time, right? There's been trillion, let's just say simply, there's been trillions of human beings. Am I really supposed to think that there are trillions of individual souls?
Hmm.
I've always felt that was, I mean, I'm not saying it's not true, I don't know, but it's always just not felt, I don't know, intuitive to me. It is, and
So from the Jungian point of view, there might be like billions of human beings, but then there will be a few types, and uh, these billions can be in a way subsumed under these types. However, another way to think about this would be through the daimon perspective, where although there are billions of humans, or there were billions of humans,
right,
there aren't billions of souls, but rather these daimons. They are not
right.
billions, but and it is they are the ones. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think so. Essentially, and again, it's just an idea. It's something I think about and I don't know. But instead of thinking that every individual human being that has ever lived had an eternal soul that is, I don't know where they're at, and it doesn't matter, but let's just pretend they're congregating somewhere once the
Mm-hmm.
human dies. You know, that's just a tremendous number of souls. It's like trillions,
True.
possibly, right? What if what really goes on is this body, this being, Susanne, is only existent for the time that this body is existent. But that which animates me, that which you could even claim is my intelligence and sort of the core of my personality, right? The talents I have or the gifts, etc. That's a daemon.
Mhm.
And that daemon has already been inside of who knows how many humans, right? And so if we kind of think of it as a visual, you could imagine all the human beings, but then what really endures after death is the daemon.
Mm.
And so, say right now in 2025,
Mhm.
let's just say that my daemon is actually responsible for, let's just say, 200 different human beings throughout time.
Got it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See? okay? Because the daemon is immortal, according to
mm,
the ancients.
mm,
And so that daemon now is each instantiation inside of a human being adds another facet to its being, right? So, and my daemon may at one time have been inside of a male body. It could have been inside of a male body, maybe not, but um, the concept of daemons, as interested by Jung or Hillman or whoever, indeed does involve these sort of unique traits that a human being will have that are very particular to that person. It also explains why people will say they have past life
mm,
memories.
mm, mm,
So it's not really that Susanne existed in 1723,
mm,
but the daemon inside of Susanne did exist in 1723
mm,
and might remember so it's like my consciousness gains access to the memories of an immortal being that's had multiple lifetimes,
mm.
right?
So
And
is
it gets
that
through just ideas,
yeah?
right?
Is that what is happening? Is that okay? So that could be one way in which we can read the astral projection aspect
Yeah,
of the film. Yeah, that
that it's the daemon.
of the series. Yeah, it's not the individual because memory does play a role in their discussion. So that's also a supporting
Right.
evidence for this because you can only astrally project um, if you have
To
been to
places you've
that
been.
to the places that you've been to. So there is that element of memory. There's only those places which you remember can
Mhm.
be sort of re-experienced. And so that does make sense to then use this theory or use this set of ideas to read this series then. Yeah, that makes a sense to, or that opens a particular window through which to look at the series, the concept of the daimones, or even perhaps also the concept of the divine twin in
Mhm.
Manichaean and other Gnostic traditions, where
Mhm.
the concept of the divine twin is much more individualistic than the concept of the daimon because yeah, but I think that actually I think the daimon the daimon lens becomes the better lens to see what is happening in the series, indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, I mean, I think most of us, at least at some point, have enjoyed or liked the idea that as an individual, once I'm dead, I get to continue somehow, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, even if, committed atheists, when they were at least younger, maybe reading books or something, they've at least toyed with the thought or whatever.
Of
I mean, because
eternal life.
it's appealing. And at the same time, though, like I said, for whatever reason, I mean, I'm quite young even, I always just kind of felt like, and not that I had this language then, but I guess something inside of me felt like it was egoic to think that I am so special that I get to continue because it's not just me, it's billions and billions, possibly trillions of individuals. And I mean, maybe it is, and maybe it's real. But I also think the daemon concept can be tied in very well with um, ideas that are often talked about as being about a soul.
Mm,
Because maybe when people are talking about souls, really what it is the daemon. So,
mm.
the river of forgetting, right? That when you die,
Lately?
this is a Plato, you die and your soul is gonna go through the river of forgetting and forget your life, and then you'd be born into another body. I've always felt like, well, why can't that just be the daemon? And
Correct.
it's not even a full forgetting either. The daemon, as the daemon, probably has a sense of its immortality, right? And I certainly think that,
In a way, then the river is us, right? So once the
right.
daemon
Yeah.
like dips into a body, that's the lete. That's when the daemon forgets, and then
Right.
maybe that's
And and that's why when I say I think I am me. I mean, of course I think I'm me.
mm,
I mean, I don't suffer from a dissociative identity disorder or anything. But at the same time, have had lots of experiences of familiarity with things that I know I am not familiar with. So as a child, I
right.
moved overseas. I totally felt like I'd already been there. I absolutely loved being in Iran and it seemed familiar. And of course,
Mhm.
as a kid, I'm just like, oh, this is my mom had taught me the concept of deja vu. And I mean, early on, and she would often say, oh, that's just deja vu. That's just deja vu. But it would happen to me all the time. And then, being good at certain things, I wish I could play the piano. I've always wanted to do that. I do not possess that talent. But there's other things that as soon as I picked it up, so to speak, it was like I had already been taught how to do it. And so, and again, this is how the daemon is
Mm.
described in, Jung or Hillman or whoever. Um, and so I don't know, it's always made a lot of sense to me. And in that film, that's what I was thinking would have the capacity for astral projection and especially for the switching, right? I mean, maybe humans can do it.
Because one criticism that I had of the series and of the story is that it felt to me that that the soul, if it's a soul, is too self-contained and too uncontaminated by the body. In the sense that when Rob enters into Adele's body, he still remains too much Rob, and the embodied experience of now being inside a woman's body, to me at least, did not feel as if that changed Rob's character that much,
Mhm,
as though the soul is well formed and is not in the need of the body to build character.
mhm.
I mean, um, but what about embodiment? Because once one is in a body, one's world shifts, right? So, I mean, it felt too dualistic, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
That it felt as if the soul can simply enter into another body and use the body as a vehicle without being affected by that new embodied circumstance. So to me,
Right.
that
And in that,
was, yes.
right. Yeah, because that makes me think of like you could just launch sort of like a Cartesian critique here.
Anti-Cartesian. Yes, yes, exactly.
Because certainly, if it was Rob's soul and Rob, had always been inside of Rob's body, right? And he's a male,
Yes,
and he's of a certain height and a certain weight, and he had
absolutely.
lived in that way. And then suddenly his consciousness, his soul is in this other body. You'd think there would be a little bit, at least, of a learning curve, right? Like just
Exactly.
the length of my arm, right?
Not only that, he's now going to enter into or has entered into the body of a black woman. And
Right,
that's an entirely different world. That's
right,
you're also taking up different liabilities when you do that.
right,
But I didn't feel that the show expressed that much. It felt as if
right,
it's nothing to take up. I mean, the difference between being in a white woman's body and a black woman's body is a world of difference.
right.
But
Or a white male to a white woman, or a white male to a
exactly,
black woman.
exactly.
No,
So,
I totally agree with you on that. But that's where I think the daemon idea would
hmm,
take care of that because the daemon being immortal has already been embodied
hmm.
over and over
So
and over.
do you think then that the daemon will be unaffected by the bodies that the daemon takes up? Um, is the daemon not going to be impacted by being inside a black body?
Not like a human would. I mean,
Right.
I just think that its essence in what it is, it would be a much more seamless sort of overtaking or,
So
coming
then,
in. And
so now I think that the only way to read the film, or the, sorry, not the film, the series then is to is to read it through the daemon hypothesis, because
I,
if
yeah, I like it that way. I mean, and again, the writer of the book probably may not even know that concept, but that's what it was when I was watching it. That's how I was understanding it. I was like, okay, this whole switching thing to me, that's beyond human capacity. I'm all about like just the idea that as a human, I could astral project or my consciousness could possibly travel in some way or something. But that switching thing was so like dramatic that I was like, okay, now I can think about the whole show, but from the point of view of a daemon. And so when we were talking about the daemons and the fact that every human has one, so this was an idea I developed with my good friend, Dr. Mary Gwynn, probably around 2006. We were having lots of conversations about this. And one of the challenges to the idea, first and foremost, was the way in which human population dramatically increased at a certain point in time, right? So if every human has a daemon, and we've suddenly went from, let's just keep it simple, let's say we had 2 billion people for a really long time, and then all of a sudden there's 8 billion people. Where did those daemons come from,
mm,
right? Now, maybe there's a reservoir, or maybe
infinite
being
daemons,
itself,
yeah.
can just, if you think of it as emanation, just more daemons get created.
Mhm.
But another idea we came up with was that, again, just using simple visuals, right? You have being, and being turns into a host of divinities, and those divinities then give rise to myriad daemons. Maybe, let's just keep it simple, say there were only 2 billion daemons,
Mhm.
but now there are 8 billion people. Maybe the daemons then do the same thing. Can you follow what I mean? They split, if you will,
Oh.
right? One daemon now is spread out into five, or
Mhm.
pick a number.
Mhm.
Um, and with that idea,
Mhm.
I was actually thinking about Heidegger, what he says about the daemons. They are all affective dispositions known to man, from
Mhm.
joy and mourning to what does he say? Uh, Horror and terror. Okay. And he says the daemons are more demonic than any demon.
Mm.
Okay. So there's a range. And again, this is where the whole understanding of being, and if being is sort of everything possible and then some, so to speak, it's necessarily going to contain this full range of affects. Well, that means that some daemons, and Hillman agrees with this idea here in his book, some of the daemons are not going to like,
Yeah, sure.
paint
Mm.
and solve mathematical things or write books. Some of those daemons, my friend and I started calling them trifling daemons. And
Mm.
what we had in mind was that these are the kinds of daemons, to be a little crude, who would have someone huffing paint and raping their cousin.
Mm. Mm.
Okay, because the daemon is an immortal disembodied entity seeking to have a flesh experience, right? And if the daemons are in the full range of affects,
Mhm.
then you're not just going to have painters and
Yeah,
mystics, and you're going to have,
the full range. Yeah,
right.
yes.
And I don't know, as a concept and just some things to think about, it made a lot of sense to
Mm.
think of things like that. And it also, to me, helps make sense of how, you know people say, two people growing up in the same household can turn out so incredibly different.
Mm.
Like, one is, a lover of humanity and doing great things, and this other one is all caught up in addiction
Mm.
or to violence, or and yeah. So I don't know. I just think it's a rich idea, and it's definitely one I enjoy thinking about and trying to link it up, right, with all these
And
various.
also functions as a good lens to the film as well. It's
Yeah, I think
yeah,
so. And again, it's sad that Adele, her body was alive, but Adele wasn't there. And again, well, Adele's soul went to be with the Lord, maybe, okay? Or maybe Adele ceases to exist when Adele's, demon, right, was inside of a body that was killed.
hmm,
And, that just means that daemon would have been, went back, right, went through its little travel through the river of forgetting and gets to be
right.
put inside of a new human,
Right,
right?
right. It
Um,
also links up quite well with the Buddhist and Hindu theories of reincarnation,
mhm,
where every incarnation making flesh in a way. So
right.
every incarnation, there is a forgetting of the previous incarnation.
Mhm,
The only difference here is that understood no, with Buddhism, there is a possibility to think of this in terms of um, different combinations of conscious, uh, different different congealments or concretizations of conscious um, attributes, for example.
mhm,
So, because Buddhism does not believe in a soul.
right,
So what
right.
you
No,
have is sort of congealment of conscious experience or conscious attributes and so on. So it perfectly fits with Buddhism, and it also fits with the idea of forgetting, where
mhm,
one combination disintegrates and reintegrates into another combination, and this would become the new personality or the new character or the new soul, which is created for the
right.
next life. Um, uh, and so, yeah, I kind of also see this connection with the Buddhist notion of consciousness, and in the Buddhist notion of, sorry, the Buddhist notion of reincarnation. And in the Buddhist notion of reincarnation, you do not need um, an individual soul for every
Right.
or for an individual human being either. So you can actually have this daimon situation,
Hmm.
um, but in a different vocabulary, obviously,
Right.
not in the same vocabulary.
Right.
But yeah.
And another thing about the demonic, and I'm trying to now think of the source material that this particular idea is coming from. It'll come to me. But okay, so the daemon is the connection between the human and the divine. And again, you could say the divine, but it's plural. It's divinities. It's deities, right?
Yes.
And so when we say that the daemon is the source of the human's gifts,
Mm-hmm.
that's really not completely accurate because
Hmm.
the source of the gifts is actually the gods. It's just the daemon is the conduit or the connector.
Right.
And so in a certain sense, if we wanted to, we could eliminate the notion of the daemon. It's just only necessary because it's the connecting.
The connecting.
But a daemon may have a connection to multiple gods.
Mm,
It's not like some one-to-one correspondence.
hmm.
And so, a given daemon, and again, I just tend to see things as pictures in my head. Like, I can see a little human and I see like this little cord, and that cord is the daemon, but it actually frays out like it has a span of 10 and it's
Hmm.
connected to 10 different divinities.
Hmm.
And so, one individual human might have one or two gifts, and then you've got this other human that actually have myriad gifts and
Hmm.
talents. Like they can do so many things,
But
and it's understood as coming from the divine
hmm.
via the daemon,
But then,
right?
other than being a vehicle or a mode of expression or material concretization, what role does the body play? in this picture, though? It looks as if
It's
it,
how being feels.
mm,
Let's just speak with being, big capital B being.
mhm,
So being, just if we just assume that being as being,
mm,
and again, this is Hesiod's chaos, before you have one or two, you've got the nothing, you've got this, you can't even call it a thing, right? Being, and it has an impulse, let's just say. I don't want to say it has a conscious desire, but it wants to have experience.
mm,
And so it becomes, right? And it's going to become a range of divinities.
mm,
And those divinities, in turn, give rise or birth, however you want to put it, to the Daimones,
mhm,
right? An array of them that have all different kinds of affects and modalities and expressions. But until you have a body, a
mm,
physical body with a nervous system,
you,
the gods can feel nothing in and of themselves, and hence, just as heroes need their garlands, the gods need human being. That's Herodlin, and Heidegger quotes that.
mm,
And so, the being, it goes with the quote about eye contact. When two people look at each other, being is looking out of and back into itself.
mhm.
And if being is just being, being's not able to do that. But if there's bodies and eyes,
It needs, in other words, the material um, expression of itself, in its
to be its
yeah,
full self, to be
yeah,
its full,
yeah, yeah.
I hate to say
So
self,
in
but
this
to be,
then in this picture, it's not as if, I mean, it actually goes against the traditional sort of um, maligning of matter, maligning of the
right,
body as a
right,
descent. It's rather an expression of,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, to me, that's why, like, arguably the two most primordial physical activities that are not about survival or reproduction are making music and dance.
Mm.
And, throughout human being in all cultures,
Didn't
finding a
the,
way to create music, drums,
uh,
sticks, shells, whatever, and dancing.
right.
And that physical uh, expression, and again, personally for me, when I was very much involved in the dance, that is what it felt like. It was like I was there, but there was no thinking. It was pure
Present.
presence and perception and the feeling. And to me, that's when I was like, yeah, that if any of this is real, that's where I could feel it happening. And
Mm,
it was like feeling that, and again, it's like a circuit.
mm,
Okay. So the passion, if you will, and the talent or the whatever, having good rhythm, right? That's coming from the divine via the daemon and into this body, but it isn't like it stops. It's a circle because through that expression,
mm,
right, of dancing or oratory or sculpting or whatever, the being itself is fulfilled,
mm,
right? It gets to experience that. Right? What does that feel like? Okay.
mm.
And in that way, we can actually sacralize virtually every human embodied activity. I think
Yes,
that
yes,
it can be sacralized and it can be an act of devotion,
right.
right?
You
Um,
know, the Sufis have a saying. It's a Hadith Qudsi, which means it's a divine, a God is speaking, but through the tongue of the prophet. So the Quran is obviously that, the revelation, but even apart from that, there are these few sayings which it is believed that God is the speaker. And there's this famous saying which in many Sufi texts you can see the saying in those texts, and it says, "I was a hidden." So God is speaking in the first person. It says, "I was a hidden treasure, and I desired to be known. Therefore, I created,
yeah,
everything, created the world,
right,
because the world is like the mirror in which the divine is seeing himself or herself."
right.
And
Right.
so the hidden treasure who oh no, it's actually I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known. And that's where
Mm,
the Sufis then say that the entire process of creation is the function or the result or the implication of divine love, because everything is here because the divine wanted recognition, wanted to be known, wanted to be loved.
right.
And therefore, because none of this is a requirement for God, He could have not
Right.
created anything. What compels Him to
Right.
create is love. So,
Right.
yeah, it
Right.
kind of goes
And so
in with that. Yeah.
I, I think of nature, and in that way, like nature as this very kind of thing. It's the divine being itself wishes to, be known, and because and it's to see. I hate to say itself, but to see it, right? To manifest in such a way that it's apparent, right? And so you look at nature and you look at all the different kinds of animals and creatures and such. And, on the one hand, people are like, oh, I like those animals and I dislike those or whatever. But you can adopt this perspective where every one of the creatures is beautiful when you try to take a more holistic view of it, because every single one of them serves a function. But moreover, when you really endeavor to try to look at them and understand them, they're so fascinatingly unique, right? And whether we're talking about an insect or a
Yes.
beaver or a goat or whatever, and in that way, I'm like, what else would you call that but love? I mean, it's just it. Yeah, there's the harsh elements of nature, but it's again we're talking about flesh and bone and blood and air and earth, and it's just the nature of life. It's going to involve the decay and the all
Yeah.
of that is going to be part of it, and the predator prey and all of that. But it's from a other certain perspective, it's absolutely beautiful and so multifaceted, and again, to me that just is an extension of the things we're talking about, where
Right.
there's this, and it's infinite, really, right? Being is infinite, and so the possible ways in which being can be a being, right, are innumerable, and
Right.
by no means have we exhausted them or seen them all yet. I mean,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so kind of far
Uh,
afield from the show, but yeah, to me, just the difficulties you mentioned about where if you think of it as just a person, like it's just Rob's soul, Rob's consciousness, and could a person really just jump into another body and be okay?
right.
Wouldn't you need to
Right.
have a learning curve, like because your body's shorter now or heavier or what have you? And
And
obviously
and
differences.
your social body is also
Right,
different now. I mean,
right,
there's a higher chance of you being stopped by the police if you, I mean, you know what I mean?
right, right,
So,
right.
so how are those things factoring into becoming um Louise now? So those things
Right.
uh, were things that I was pondering about, but putting it in this way uh, does make sense of that. Although I'm sure the creators were not thinking about it in this way, but this could be a
Yeah.
possible rereading of the show of the yeah,
Right.
so fascinating.
Yeah. And I did
So
read
the book,
when I was, no, I haven't read the book, but I did read an article that explained how the show differs from the book. Very at the very end, and the book is even darker. So, in the
oh,
end, you're left kind of that final scene is Louise in the front seat, and her little boy is kind of looking at her like, "What's going on?" And
and she
it's
doesn't
like,
care about him anymore. She's completely
yeah, I
gone.
mean, she looked pretty malevolent, honestly, when he says, "But Mom, you don't like boats."
Mm,
And she looks at him and says, "Maybe I've changed."
yes.
Apparently, the book actually lets you know that she intends to kill that child.
Mm.
Rob. Yeah.
Right, right,
Oh,
right. Because he's an interference now to,
right. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
He's totally in the
yeah,
way.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But it is interesting just to think about the character of David too. And you know, I mean, because that was obvious. I mean, because I can really get into something and do the whole suspension of disbelief, right? Because I just enjoy film and stuff, and I can just go into what it is, and then afterward, think about it and have a criticism maybe. But I was thinking about David, and you know, and just about any of us, I mean, whether or not we think we would be able to tell, if
Yeah.
the inhabiting entity
Mm.
is different, even though everything else looks the same.
Mm.
And I don't know, it's just something that's interesting to think
It
about.
looked as if he did not um, yet suspect anything regarding Louise.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the show is clear that he does not love Adele anymore, and and obvious. I mean, he understood that because she did not have remorse for Rob's death, which was so out of character for her.
Mhm.
That's the beginning
Mhm.
of his doubt. But he has no doubts right now about Louise. He thinks
Right.
she is still Louise. Um,
Mhm. And he hasn't really
I
known her
hated
very,
him for sorry. Oh yeah,
and
we
he hasn't really known
exactly.
Louise that long,
Exactly.
right?
And he will, I mean, he knows people. He will understand this immediately. I mean, as soon as they are on that holiday, he'll know what's happening. I hated him for the first half of the show
Yeah, I know.
because obviously he's cheating on his wife. He's not being honest. He's
It seems like he's drugging her too, right? That he's
yes,
medicating her. Comes
yes,
off like he's controlling her.
and he's so mean to her in the
Yeah,
sense that he does not respond to
right,
her attempts. I mean, she makes dinner once and
right.
he doesn't respond. So I did not like him at all for the first half.
I know,
But
right.
then at the end, I just loved him. He
I
was the
know.
best at the end. So that's also a good
No,
twist. I mean, how they make us uh, change our minds about the character. That also
yeah,
was a good twist. I liked that one
no.
too.
That's always one
Yeah,
of my favorite parts about any show that I really
yeah,
like would be the sort of character development and the way the story's told to
exactly,
shape
exactly,
your perception of the character.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I was
so
also expecting something to happen between Louise and her ex husband because I saw that but then once she meets Adele and David and understands how they're trapped in this
mhm,
relationship, she actually understands the value of breaking up. And
right,
she explains that to her kid
right.
in such a nice way that and that's when
Hmm.
she is happy with her divorce. That's when
Right.
she understands that what has happened is for the good, and she starts
Hmm.
liking her, or she likes she starts becoming happy for him in his new life
Right.
with Lisa,
Yeah.
or yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's
And Louise is, really the saddest, most, I felt like the most tragic character because
absolutely.
she seemed like a genuinely good and kind person. And, with Adele, I mean, that's how Rob got her was, she rushed over there to try to save Adele, right?
I
That was
just I don't understand how Rob could predict her projecting and coming in when the door was locked. I mean, if she didn't do that, that's a big risk for Rob to take because the house is
right,
already burning. So I don't know
right,
how he made that prediction that she would try to enter the house, but when she could not, she would. Maybe he understood it the first time. He saw how desperate she was to get in,
right, right,
and but his whole bet was on her astral
right,
projecting and going in
right.
so that then the
To
flip can
save her.
happen. which also
Right.
shows that the flip does not have to be voluntary. Because in the
Right.
first one, it was voluntary. They were doing it as an experiment, and in the second one, it wasn't. There was no invitation from the body.
Right.
Rob simply
Yeah.
goes in, and yeah,
So all that would seem to indicate metaphysically that all that's required is that
the
whether we're talking
receptacle
about a
be
soul
empty.
or a daemon, that you be out, that
Yeah,
the body be emptied of its thing. And
according
that
to this.
raises a good question
Yeah,
about what would have, because I actually thought of that at the time. What would have happened if Louise didn't show up? I I mean, I don't know. I assume though, if Rob
I think Rob understood that she will show up, and
right,
she would also be receptive because
right.
she loved. She didn't love, or yeah, she did love,
She did. She cared about her. Yeah.
cared about her to the extent that she would be even that
Right.
apparently non um, pre-decided um, swapping was in some ways pre-decided because of how open she was to Adele.
Right.
So
Right.
it's afterwards that I understood that, Rob was training her to astral project with this intention in mind that he's going to do this
Yes.
uh,
Oh yeah.
sometime in
That
the
seemed to be
future.
the
So
agenda all along because if
yeah,
he's so madly in love with David, right? Do anything to be
yeah,
with David.
yeah.
Um,
And he didn't, he does, it doesn't matter to him that David does not love him back, which is a weird, toxic
oh,
scenario that
totally.
he's in. I mean, so
Right.
that's,
And I hadn't thought of it till just now, but I assume now that Louise, because it's Rob, will be start shooting up heroin,
yes,
right?
yes.
So it's in a way, it's like, well,
In a way,
Rob is gonna
oh,
recreate the whole situation,
yes, and
right? Because
yes, yeah.
that's what
And
David had told Louise. Remember when David tells Louise the story about the fire? It's before he's said who Adele is. And
mhm.
Louise asks him, well, what happened to that girl? And he says, I don't know. And
Yeah,
I took that to be not him pretending not to know her or something,
yes,
but
that's a
that
good point.
he doesn't really know what happened to her because she changed
Yes,
radically.
she changed so radically. Yes. And what's interesting is that no matter how much change he's bringing, no matter the bodies that are changing, I mean, he just wants one thing always. It's just the heroine and David, yes, but more, maybe more than David, it's the heroine, and so it's not as if the this new life is going to be a happy one for him either, but
Right,
he's just stuck in
right,
this. So,
right.
because
But
Adele
that's
was to me one of the saddest characters because she's so sad. She's so, I mean, I didn't know that this is Rob, right, at that time. So, this was the saddest character because she's making an effort, but he's so closed off to her, and one wonders why
mhm,
he's still in this.
mhm,
It's not as if it's going to be any different with Louise.
right,
I mean, why wouldn't Rob just stay where he is? Because it's not going to be
right.
any different.
Well, that's
Uh,
the addict, though. That's where the idea of him being an addict really is relevant because
right,
addiction uh
right. Or
it,
maybe his fear was that David might leave him and go be with Louise, and if that's going to happen anyway, let me be the Louise
right.
that he's going to
Of
fall in love
course.
with.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's
And the passion, David wasn't passionate about Adele anymore. And
yes,
that's part of the addiction is the love of that honeymoon phase. And that's why I was thinking, okay, even if they get to have a nice little honeymoon phase, it's gonna quickly devolve
it's
and
going
David
to.
will be like, what has
Yeah.
happened to Louise? And Louise will be
Oh,
shooting up
that's a good one.
heroin
That's a good.
and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
so, but that's it's funny to think about in a 12 step, right, for alcoholics, which I have a lot of knowledge of, just because I've known so many alcoholics. Um, there's this concept called the geographical cure, that addicts tend to think that by moving,
Uh,
they can fix their problems. And so I just think this is interesting
yes,
because
that's a good one. No, that's a
moving
really good.
bodies, right? It's actually, instead of moving to another town, it's like, let me go be this other person, right? But inevitably,
The,
the
the,
the essence of the addiction, the addict, is going to
yes,
destroy
yes.
this new thing too.
This is where
Um,
I was saying in the beginning that it looks as if the entire thing is a metaphor for addiction. It
right,
looks as if
right,
the whole
definitely.
story is the story about addiction and um, how repetitive it is also, you know,
Right. And cyclical, right? So it has
cyclical.
this
Yeah.
cycle that it goes through. And, whether, and again, addiction isn't just with drugs. It's, people can have addictive personality and be addicted to sex. They can be addicted to romance, right? There are people who are love addicts.
Hmm.
And so that they are just addicted to that, that initial rush and high off of, the
Yeah.
chemistry with somebody new, right? And so Rob might have a bit of that going on, because as Louise, he is new to David, and there will be some passion, I'm
Yeah,
assuming, and
that's the honeymoon
he's
phase you were
already been
talking about
watching,
when it comes to,
right? He's already been voyeur, right? When he was watching them have sex, right? His
yeah,
little astral
yeah,
projection, so he
yeah,
could watch that.
yeah.
But yeah, now that I'm really thinking about it, you might be right that I'd be interested to know about the novel and if it's kind of, could be taken that way as being
Hmm.
about addiction. Um,
I
but
was,
yeah,
yeah, I was wondering about that other, that other person who runs who's a, who runs a cafe.
right.
What
Yeah,
about her? Was she also being, no, in that case, he simply threatened her and did not try to
right,
fall in love with her, or Adele did not try to fall in love with her because Adele knew that she does not have the astral projecting
right,
abilities. So
right.
all he
And
wanted
she
to do,
just scared her off,
yes,
right? She
he would have done the
scared her
same with
away.
Louise,
Uh-huh.
if she did not know about and she got to know about that because she tried to go meet. When she met up with her, she mentioned to her about her dreams and so on, and
Right,
that's when she understood that okay, she could be a good doorway, a good vehicle for me to uh,
right,
continue.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
interesting.
so, but yeah, so he'd already, had extramarital affairs. So, clearly the relationship between David and Adele, which is really Rob, was, had already lost its
Yeah.
pizzazz or whatever, right?
Mm.
And yet David was committed to Adele in a certain sense, right?
Yeah,
But also clearly,
because apparently there's some evidence of his watch being in the well or something like that. So there's
right,
a fear that he might be caught and be considered the killer. And that's the thing that's making him stay.
right,
But how long can he? So Rob knew that even that time is ticking. He can't
right,
blackmail him anymore. So he needs to get out of Adele now into this other
hmm,
person that David loves, and that will go on for some time. I don't know if he can blackmail him in this case um,
right,
because there's no way that he can do that, and so in this case, he'll just have to he'll just have to try and figure out some way for David to stay.
mm,
And obviously David is going to fall in love with someone else because they're going to move to another city. And then he'll have to go check with this person and see if they are capable of
yeah,
this.
exactly.
Yeah, and this cycle goes on and on and on. And
Uh-huh.
so all he gets is these honeymoon phases. And so the entire
Right,
struggle is for that one small little sliver that he'll get with
right.
every person. So
Right, which
it's
is the addiction thing. So,
yes.
like
So
why you have to keep doing more and more, of the drug so you get that same high. And it's like constant quest for that.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
in that way, Rob is, and again, addiction understood as being rooted in trauma. That applies here too, right? Rob came from a
a very traumatic.
really
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
difficult, traumatic
But
childhood.
I thought that I thought that he really liked Adele as a friend,
Yeah.
and I
Oh,
was
I think so.
yeah, I
Mhm.
was surprised why did he not show? I mean, why is he not sad about what he did with Adele? Because I don't think that he was always evil. He saw their house, and that's when he felt that, this is the life that I want, and he made a decision. Fine, but it looks as if the the creators could have done something extra to show that he also felt bad about this, and they could have added that element, which they did not, would have made Rob a little bit more complicated. Rob is just simple evil at this point. He just
Well, like a psychopath, a little
yeah,
bit psychopathic,
that was
because
not how he was in the facility. He was very good with her, and unless Adele simply does not know how to read people and
right,
just falls
right,
for people without knowing about their intentions. That could be one way to read this, but yeah,
yeah.
but it
I
felt as
guess
if
I thought that the visit, Rob coming to her house,
yeah,
that it was sort of a causal nexus right there because obviously there's wealth and privilege, right? There's
right,
an existence that he has never ever imagined or dreamed of. There
yeah,
was the beautiful forest that he seemed clearly enamored of, but then when David arrived, to me that really was
yeah,
the key because
yeah.
there's that scene, well,
Making he's making bread.
cooks, Rob cooks,
Yeah,
and then they're eating together. And I think Adele gets up and leaves to go to bed and leaves the two of them
yeah,
there, Rob and David. And I don't know, to me, that was just as if, it's like pushed him over the edge in some way, where
yeah. It did.
his envy of her
Right,
became so profound.
right.
And that's when the idea sparked. I don't think it was like he'd had that
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, because I don't think he knew too much about the world to be able to conceptualize what
Right,
Adele has. So it's only
right.
when she invites him that he understands
Right.
what she has. And I feel that given that given that he is if affected by his circumstances in this case, how is he not affected by circumstances and by situations in his later cases? I mean, so that
Right,
one has to,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, if we do think of David as one of his addictive focuses, right?
yeah.
Then, everything else is gonna
Oh
because
yeah, be
with
shaped for
addiction, you
that.
can have
You know,
multiple addictions. You can also switch addictions, right? An addict can
right.
switch their addictions. Um, but so I think the heroin's just kind of this for him. It seems like heroin is like maintenance, like a person who drinks every day. They might be high functioning, they might
Right,
function well in the world, but they are drinking
right,
every day.
right.
So his heroin is more like that,
Yeah,
whereas
because
Dave,
uh,
the
be-
the
right, because
big deal.
yes, because he's happy. Oh no, he's fine with a sad life with David. I mean, the
Mhm.
most horrible, rejected
Yeah.
life, which is again addiction. You know,
Yes.
this pain
Right.
is
And of course,
necessary.
when this opportunity presented
Yeah,
to write, oh wow, I can actually get a new life with David, and we can kind of have what we had before, and it'll be exciting, and there'll be romance,
right,
sex and romance. And
right,
then he just decided to capitalize upon that
right,
opportunity.
right. And
Uh,
I think he knows full well that this is not going to go too much. Mhm.
Right. He's just going to ride it for, ride the high as long as he can,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
and do whatever he has to do. And
right.
again, that makes me think of Aristotle's idea too about, you know, with a human being, there is no stasis. Okay.
Mm.
A human being is always either moving more towards virtue
Yeah,
or more towards vice.
right.
And so that's one of the things about an addict.
Mm-hmm.
An addict invariably over time becomes more vicious. There's no escaping it. Now, the links to
So
which
true.
their vice will
Huh.
carry them can vary,
Mm-hmm.
right? But Rob, I think that show does illustrate that
Mm-hmm.
his character worsens,
Right.
what he's willing to do and, the links to which he'll go, right? And so, unchecked, then, like Aristotle points out, that person can become so habituated to vice that
Hmm.
they're incapable of changing, right? And so I just assume that's where Rob's headed, right?
Right.
He's just, yeah,
Hmm.
um,
It's a
and
good
may
point
end up,
about human beings not being in stasis. I mean, that definitely is true and applies to Rob for sure. Where
Mhm.
yeah, where he becomes he progressively worsens
Right,
surely because I do remember him being a sweet and he was not like you said he was not faking that but the viciousness kind of
right,
progressively adds up or so
right. Well,
absolutely.
it's classic behavioral stuff, right? You got
Right.
to take some young person who, they start out just hanging out with some bad people, and then pretty soon they're doing a little shoplifting, and then pretty soon they're like breaking into houses and, anything, right? In Aristotle's view of habituation as character, anything at
Yeah.
all, right? The do it once, it's easier to do it again, and you keep
Yeah.
doing it, and it's easier and easier, and you're moving one direction or another. So,
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Um,
So would there be is there anything else do you think that we did not cover about about the show?
Maybe, I don't know, but it's just all really interesting to ponder, to think
Yes.
about, right? And I did see some people didn't like the show. Apparently, I didn't really read those bad reviews, but I did like it. I liked it a lot, and I
Mm.
loved the twist and the stuff
Yeah.
at the
Really,
end.
really interesting.
Um, but it's interesting to think about. And if we do think of Rob, not so much as like this individual human soul and what's going, but as a daemon,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
The daemon is kind of the driving force. Um, that it fits with Hillman's understanding of a daemon. It's not, there's all kinds,
Right.
and you
Yeah. Yeah.
know,
No, no, no. That makes sense. That totally
explains serial killers and a wide variety of crazy things, right?
right.
If you're just
Right.
like, how can this even happen? Which can be an unsettling idea that being um, as such has this crazy full
Yeah.
range,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And in a way, it's that range that makes sense of any individual thing to begin with. It's because there is a range that anything has a certain
Right,
meaning, and one is able
right,
to enjoy anything or experience anything is because there's a range
right,
to it. So yeah, so
right.
that's the thing. So I guess with that. Um, we also
Yeah.
obviously await comments and your opinion about the show and
Oh,
opinion about
definitely.
the analysis that we just did of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it from us, and we hope to get back with more interesting shows and films and topics, philosophical, religious, and spiritual, and otherwise in general. So with that, I think, and with the request to like and subscribe, I think that
Yes.
should be sign off from us, Susanne and Bharatwaj. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.